This podcast is brought to you by Primary Arms. Primary Arms seeks to provide the best shopping experience for everything firearms. With over 13,000 products from over 400 top brands, Primary Arms carries a complete selection of rifles, handguns, firearms parts, shooting gear, apparel, and more. Every order comes with a commitment to superior service, backed by fast shipping and an expert support team. Primary Arms, serving freedom since 2008. Find out more at frn.deals/PA. Welcome to the AR-15 podcast. This show is for you if you just bought your first rifle or if you've been building them for years. There is something we can all do to take our black rifles to the next level. My name is Nick Dooley, and tonight our co-host will be joining us a little bit later, and they'll pop in. They had some other, one had some fairly important stuff to do. The other one is probably out teaching something. So they, I don't know if we'll count that as important or not, but they will be joining us here when they get a chance to. But in the meantime, I am joined tonight by our very special guest, Joel from Magne-Tech. How we doing?
How's it going, Nick?
Oh, I am just living the dream. I love this time of year because it is finally nice enough on a consistent basis that I can actually plan on going to the range.
I know, right? I hear you.
Because I've gotten through the phases of winter where you have winter and then you have fall, spring, and then you get second winter with another snowstorm because you're like, oh, everything's thawed out. Like we can start doing this and getting down to training again. And then you can't.
Right.
And then before you know it, it'll be wintertime again because you pack everything possible into like 4 or 5 months.
That's right. Yep.
So, well, the other guys will probably be joining us here shortly. We will get talking. I generally will go through, if you're not familiar with the show, Joel, we'll talk a little bit about anything kind of neat or interesting we've done or been training for in the past week, because we are huge proponents of training on this show. And everybody needs to at least start getting trained so that you are proficient with your firearms. Because if you're not training and proficient with them, then they're glorified paperweights, and no one wants to be a loot drop.
Yes,
so,
yep.
I haven't really got to do much other than I was playing with some silencers the other day and testing some new ones out, and I'll talk more about that later. But have some thoughts on there needs to be more silencer mounting systems that just go to an A2 flash hider. Or maybe I just need to be less cheap and buy one of the established ones that costs a lot of money.
It's always a concern, right?
Yeah, and that is only pertinent to me when I'm like, oh, I might have to send this rifle back. But I also know that I would like to run this suppressed, and it'll be fun. So,
oh yeah,
but well, attaching things to a rifle is actually very much so kind of what your company does.
Yeah, we're kind of trying to revolutionize the way you can attach accessories, optics, pods to a rifle instantly. So
Yep.
that's kind of our niche.
Yeah, and I know that the first time I saw you guys was actually at SHOT Show, and we were wandering through in our Hawaiian shirts and
wandering through the endless maze of vendors
in the maze of SHOT Show, going like, okay, that's neat. I'm not even sure what that is. I don't need a stun gun. Thank you. No, I'm fine.
But it has a laser and it's got a light on it too, Nick.
Yeah, it does everything. And I'm like, yeah, including like make my fillings hurt looking at it.
Yeah.
And you go through and then you almost walking through SHOT Show, or if nobody's ever been there before, it's hard to explain it because you think it's like, oh man, it's just like Disney World of guns, and it kind of is, but it also
But on
kind of
steroids.
isn't. Yeah, you get really excited, and then you go around the first time. You're like, all right, I'm gonna check these booths out, and I'm gonna look at this, and like somebody will go up like, oh yeah, let's look at the Glock booth, and you realize that all the Glock pistols just look like Glock pistols.
That or else start through your list of vendors you want to hit and you're like, oh my gosh, it's already the first day and we've only made it through like
Half,
10, 20 vendors.
yeah. You're you're hitting that and hitting your vendors because I've gone on the business side, and then this year I got to go through as a media side and went, oh, all right, well, this will be different because before where I was actually doing that, I was like, I can just look for new cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you start to kind of, almost become blind to it because you're going, I don't understand why this ammo case is revolutionary. You know, and
Right.
then you come up on something that, as you walk through the haze of people walking at 1/2 mile an hour, because for some reason I always wind up behind the slow walker.
Yep.
And in between just reconsidering all of my life choices that brought me to that moment in time, you look over and you see something that's actually really cool. And you kind of have to do a double take and stop and go, all right, now what's this? And when I saw it, I originally just thought it was something to mount a flashlight. And there's like,
Yep.
oh, what? And I think there was like a wall hanger there as well. So it's like, oh, this,
Yeah.
all right, I can see maybe a display thing. And then you get or started talking with you a little bit, and I was like, okay, now I'm interested. Like,
That's kind of what we saw a lot of people do when they would walk by our booth. It was funny when we would approach them and say, "You want to see a magnetic system for tactical applications?" And immediately you could see the skepticism in their look, and they just thought, I don't know. And we'd slap that flashlight onto the mount, and they're like, "Oh, damn!" That was usually the response we'd get, and and then we would start to show them the wall mount. You can hang your rifle onto your wall with, and um, you could slap an optic on there. You could slap a laser on there. The system was designed to hold the zero, and so it was fun to watch people slowly change their opinion from skepticism to I can actually see using this product. So it was really really cool.
yep. And that's like, that was 100%. Well, I shouldn't say 100%. We looked over it and saw it and went, oh, that is very much so like, all right, I need to see more, just because you look at it the first time and you go, honestly, my first thought was, oh, Kinetic Development Group. Have you ever heard of them? They made a bunch of products for the Scar, and
I haven't heard of them.
they made an M-lock attachment that was really neat. But it was like they made a pick rail chunk for, like, that went into M-lock,
Hmm.
but you'd mount whatever you needed to the to that, and it was a quick detach M-lock where you
Okay.
like push the safety in and pull these 2 tabs in, and it would just pop off, and then you could
Yeah.
pop it on and off, and it was like, "Oh, man, that's really cool."
Yeah.
So, when I first saw your product, I thought it was kind of a version of that. Just, at 100% not reading, seeing, or, listening to anything, just they took that on and off really fast. Is it a system like this? And, you know, but,
Yeah, kind of. And actually the quick detach system for the M-Lock, we had a lot of feedback from people say, um, is there do you have some kind of a quick detach for your M-Lock mount on the weapon side that you can just attach that M-Lock weapon mount when you need it and just quick detach it off when you don't need it? And I thought, well, we don't have anything yet, but don't that certainly could be in the works in the future. Because yeah, I mean, you may or may not want to always have that weapon mount on your rifle at all times.
Yep. Oh, and it's I have seen before one other. There's a company that made a flashlight that had a mount that could go on, and then you could pull it off. You could drop the light off of it quick. Actually, I think it was an O light, and it was handy because you could pack it to go like hunting, or like throw it in if you're going to go hog hunting and travel. You can pull your light off and then still have it to use, but you
Yeah,
don't have to keep it on your, which is always kind of, it is the good and bad thing about putting things on your rail. One, everybody wants to. There was a time when everyone hung everything to include a toilet paper roll dispenser off the side of their rifle because it was, how much crap can we put on this?
right.
And,
Why not, right?
and or we get into the Brandon Herrera, bean holder that he 3D printed to, hold a can of beans on top of your rifle.
Awesome.
But it's when you move past the just because we can, didn't mean we should type questions.
Sure.
It's mounting things is cool because everybody, you like to do the pictures for the gram, and oh yeah, I have my light mounted, and a laser and all of these things.
Yeah.
But the problem is sometimes packing those up and taking them around because, well, it makes for oblong packaging, and some people don't like to custom cut foam cases and etc.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing you guys had that was rather unique is you were actually doing optics mounts as well with the same system.
Right. And that's the system was really intended initially. It was started out with just a flashlight and an accessory, like a light. And the requirements for the system, the system itself was to be self-zeroing and to be able to withstand recoil, and a couple of other requirements. But the one of the primary requirements was to be self-zeroing. So when I created it for the flashlight and was able to get some prototypes and see how well it was working, I quickly realized that it holds a zero better than I thought it would, and more accurate than I thought it would, more precise than I thought. Um, and so I thought, well, let's try it on with an optic and see how well it will return to zero every time I take it off and stick it back on. So I took it to the range and shot it at 25 yards, and between every shot I would remove the optic and stick it back on, and I would shoot. I shot a group there to try it out, and surprisingly, I had a decent sized group, reasonably precise group, and then I moved it out to 50 yards and tried it there, and again it was pretty similar results, and I thought, wow, maybe there is something to this. So that's kind of the direction that I think the system's going, is developing more applications for different optics. If you want to have a thermal scope or sight, or if you want to have a magnified sight, or if you want to have just a red dot, or there's so many different options on there. A laser, infrared light, if you're night hunting, and so a lot of different applications. And the nice thing about it is it's instantly configurable, and you don't need to you can take your optic off and put it back on and not have to worry about, oh man, is it still, not have that in the back of your mind. I've touched my sight now, my optic, and so I got to shoot a piece of paper and make sure that it's still good. It's just solid. So yeah, I think that's the direction we're going.
Yep. So Nick must have missed the when I had the split screen up here because he just asked, would this work for a magnifier?
Yeah. Um, I'm a shower, so absolutely. So the system here, you can see my red dot on here. Stick that on there, and then I've got my magnifier here. If you want to stick a magnifier on there, just like that. So you can take your magnifier off, clip it on a MOLLE mount or something on your belt clip. We've got magnetic belt clips and MOLLE mounts and all that stuff. So you can take off what you need. I mean, you would need to have an optic on unless you had iron sights on. But yeah, you can certainly run a magnifier on that. Or red dot is where we're going anyway.
Now that is awesome. When you say your groups were coming back on, what was the repeatability of your zero on that? Were you down to like a half minute, a 1 minute?
It was about, let's see, it was a 2-inch grouping at 50 yards. So it's about what's that? About a 2 minutes of angle, I think. Is that?
Yep. So that's with the optic and the rifle and everything.
Yeah.
But so it's, if you did everything in a 100% controlled environment, I'm sure it would be, because there's just straight up people who shooters and like a M16 service rifle or an M4 service rifle for the Army is a 2 MOA rifle. That is the mil spec. So that is all that they are required to be, or to get within military specifications. It is a 2-inch group at 50, and that is all that's required. And then they also have 2 MOA ammo. So
okay,
that's where your grouping can depend. Depends upon the rifle and all of that stuff. Where I have rifles that I have an AR that'll shoot dime sized groups at 50 yards. Then I have another one that it's minute of Badger.
Yeah, I mean, it was this rifle here. It's a little pistol. It's a 9.5-inch barrel, and I wasn't using any special ammo. It was just whatever I found. I think it was Remington, whatever was at Smith and Edwards when I went, and
just kind of your standard. Hey, I looked into this and
grabbed it, put a couple holes in the paper, measured it, and I'm like, okay, it's good enough to at least pursue the idea.
Yep.
I think so.
So speaking of the idea, I guess we kind of skipped over. We got right into products and all of the kind of cool stuff on it. Where did your company come from? Like what got its start?
Well, I'm pretty new to the shooting sport, and so I got my first AR. So let's see, your podcast is perfect for someone like me. Whether it's your first gun, right? That's what it said. Yep. So yeah, I got my first AR in 2020. My brother-in-law, he built it for me, and I got it, and I just was asking him about some of the attachments that came with it at the time. It just had a little M-lock to Picatinny rail mount at the time, and I asked him, "What's this? What do I use this for?" And he's like, "Well, it's if you want to mount like a light on your gun, or if you want to run maybe a pod on it, a bipod or something." And I thought, "Oh, okay." I was like, "So, is there any kind of a quick attachment system, or does everything that you attach onto the gun have to use a tool to attach it?" And he says, "Well, there are some options, but what you're talking about uses magnets." He's like, "There isn't anything out there that exists that uses magnets." And I thought, huh, well, so that kind of got the wheels turning, and a conversation sparked with what would be required of a system like this that's magnetic and stuff. And so that's where we kind of developed some requirements for it. So yeah, I got working, and I don't know if you can see, but a little white piece up there on my board, that's the very first prototype that I developed for the system. And all it is just a couple of magnets and
3D printed, and
this socket that's 3D printed, and it goes on the M-lock. And so I had this, and I had the other male half. Yep. So that's how the system works, is a female and a male, and then they couple together, and that's how you get the recoil resistance is this mechanical feature here.
Yep. So what was
So
your background before you decided to take a giant leap into the firearms industry? Because everyone knows that like I know a lot of people who like found themselves in the firearms industry, for lack of a better term. It's you didn't wake up and be like, like I've made the joke that I was pretty much born with a firearm in my hand. Like I came out of the womb and they went, here, son, you'll need this. And I've never stopped shooting since. And it's permeated through all aspects of my life. But I know a lot more people who are like, so I was doing this and then I kind of came up with this and I found myself here. And I'm like, okay, well, that's, I love happy accidents. Was it Bob Ross said, there's no mistakes, only happy accidents.
And so, yeah, to answer your question, how I did kind of stumble onto it because um, my background is I worked for the U.S. Air Force as a civilian for 10 years. Sorry, 7.5 years as a civilian, 4.5 years as a contractor. But the first 7.5 years, I was an F-16 structural engineer. So
Oh yeah.
that was kind of where I got my background in metals and heat treatments and different alloys, aluminum alloys, and different coatings and anodic coatings and those types of things, that were more applicable to aircraft. But um, it's I've always had a passion for wanting to invent something or create something. And so when I got this first AR, and my brother-in-law, after that discussion we had, I kind of thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity. I'll work on it a little bit. It was 2020, so COVID was around, and we
Yep.
were all kind of penned up in our houses. And so I thought, well, I'll just work on this a little bit, see if I can't figure something out. I really didn't think too much would come of it, but
Here we are.
here we are. I just kept working on it, and 3 years later, here we are, and I've got actual products that are pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, that is, well, it is. It's really awesome, and it's glad to hear that. It has always kind of amazed me, but it really shouldn't. The number of how integral the aerospace market is into especially the AR-15, but the firearms industry as a whole, because it's, when you go back to the creation of the AR, it was, oh, we're going to use space age materials, it was polymers and aluminum.
Yeah,
What what are these things? And it was all stuff they were borrowing from Armalite was part of a bigger company that had a ton of they were actually, oh, I want to say part of Fairchild Aircraft Division,
yeah,
if my memory serves, and that's where they actually kind of pulled everything out of, and it was to make lighter weight weaponry, and then everything pushed through. But a lot of the major manufacturers, because so many of the small parts for aerospace, you use the same machines to build gun parts.
yeah. It's I felt very comfortable when I started looking at the construction of an AR, the materials that were used, and I started understanding a little bit more about ballistics and and what the energy is for recoil in a gun, to develop a system like this that can take the recoil. And so it's just been one uh, endless learning marathon. I've learned a ton of stuff about guns that I never knew before, and why things are the way that they are, why they work the way they do. And so it's
Yep.
been fun.
Well, and the some of the things people don't really realize is if you actually go through and like do the full run of accelerometers and break out all of the fancy computing tools that measure things called newtons,
Yeah.
they they
Load cells.
yeah, but it's it's not actually the initial firing of the gun and like, yeah, there's, when you turn money into loud noises in the form of that, rapid burning accelerant, the bulk of the recoil actually comes from the mass that is moving and the rapid start and stop of that.
Yep, that's
And
right.
but when you go, oh, big shell means bigger recoil. No, not always, but it has to do with how fast that bolt is moving. So
Yep,
that's where it's the weight of the mass transferring inside that tube and
yep.
where it hits, which is why buffer weights can be a huge thing, and spring pressures. I'm sorry, I'm starting to go down a weird rabbit hole there, but
But you got it. Yeah, it's force equals mass times acceleration.
yeah,
So it's all about mass and acceleration.
yep. So with that said, coming back, what have you ran your devices on so far?
So my brother-in-law, he shot the biggest caliber that we've shot it on was his. And I'm sorry if I don't know the caliber. It's 380 Lapua, I think.
338 Lapua.
338 Lapua.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what he ran on. And so that's the biggest caliber that I've shot it on so far. And he said, no issues. It was no problem.
Well,
And I thought, that's pretty
that's a
awesome.
horse of a cartridge. Actually,
Pretty,
so fun facts with Dooley. Uh, the 338 Lapua is actually what the world record sniper shot was taken with,
oh, that's
and
cool.
like not for competitive sniper, but actual combat snipers. And it's was traded back and forth between Canadian sniper and American snipers,
Hmm.
and it was like 3,200 meters.
That's what I was going to ask next. Do you remember the range?
Yeah,
3,200 meters, huh?
yeah.
That's awesome.
So it was just like a shade, like almost 2 miles.
Holy cow.
Or no, it was, yeah, 3,800 meters. I think what it was is one mountaintop to another one in Afghanistan, and he'd completely used all the twist in his scope, and like it was the fourth shot that hit the guy, but
But
yeah,
that's what did it, right?
yeah. At that point, it's like, okay, yeah, it took you but you hit a man-sized target 2 miles away. I'm not gonna talk that much shit.
Yeah, exactly. Some mad respect there.
They were, but they had to use the American ammunition because it was loaded hotter than the spec the Canadian government would issue them.
Oh,
Just one of them weird facts that's in my brain. But
that's cool though.
no, so I was just checking on it because it's when you're talking about. So I know earlier we had said like I know you're mounting red dots to it, and in looking at your website, you have a handful of like you have the Sig Romeo MSR mount, and then a basic pick rail that you could pretty much mount, and then a Vortex magnifier mount. Do you have other red dot mounts in the works?
Yes, they are in the works, but because there's so many of them. We're
Yeah,
gonna go to a universal Picatinny rail. So that mount that you see there, that's just got a generic
chunk.
uh, Picatinny chunk on it to a magnetic base is what we're going to allow you to mount any optic onto that down then to the onto the weapon mount. So rather than you having a custom mount for instead of having a custom mount for every optic that is out there, just having that generic rail that you can mount your optic to, and then stick that onto the weapon mount. That's where the direction we're going.
Yes, that's
Otherwise, I'd be designing till the cows come home with all the different optics out there.
very much so. And I bet you've gotten really good at CAD.
Oh yeah, I absolutely have. Yeah,
Yes,
I
like,
spent way too much time on it. My wife is starting to wonder.
yeah, it's one of those like, oh yeah, and Now this is one I'm gonna do a slight like little bit of a squirrel here. People don't realize the amount of horsepower you need to have in a like drafting computer. Like a good
Right.
AutoCAD computer would outperform most of the extreme gaming PCs.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
It,
the computer I use is a beast. It runs the CAD software that I use, and it also runs a computational simulation tool that I use to
yeah,
do to do analysis and stuff. So it's a beast.
like if you're getting into running like SolidWorks and stuff like that, where you're looking at
Yep.
you know how force will impact through and when all that stuff moves. At least you don't have to do like fluid interchange for heat. But
Nope, not yet.
yeah, that's again. Sorry, I went down to started doing that science talk, but that's
Hey, I like science talk. I
hey,
can
it
talk it
works.
more.
No,
You might lose some listeners.
oh, you never know. They've stuck with us through a lot of it, and they you know like I've had conversations where we start talking about bolt thrust and things of that nature for really getting down to how the lockup works and what calibers for suppression.
Hmm.
So I try to not do that all the time because that's when I start to nerd out, like have to grab a pad and a piece of paper to start drawing things.
Mm-hmm.
But
I know how that feels.
no, so you've ran it on the 338 Lapua. You have it on an optics mount already.
Yep.
Do you have plans for like a instead of just red dot where you can run it on like an LPVO or something like that where you can you know haul it down the road and have
Um,
your Hitman Agent 47 rifle that you can take apart or James Bond briefcase gun.
yeah, I mean, I think the sky's the limit, really, Nick, on what what applications there are. I mean, you could put like if you had a long scope on there, that you needed to put on, you could use two mounts, if just to keep that big, just to keep that big scope stable. You could use the two mounts and still break it off.
Yep,
But we're working on a locking mount also, so that when you put on an accessory or an optic that has kind of a higher lever, so that it has a tendency you could bump it off. The locking mount will not only zero, but it'll also lock onto that optic until you release the lever and then peel it off.
yep. So
So
so that is awesome. And with looking at that, where you're talking about like running the two mounts for one optic, that opens up a whole nother thing where you know you can have one gun that really does do it all. So
right.
one of the big things with people moving to an LPVO away from a red dot and a magnifier was they wanted to, stretch it out a little bit further, just go a little bit further and still, be able to run things up close where, as long as, we, again, if you got a half minute replicable, lockup every time you did that, if you did a, medium power scope where you could do some DMR work and then snap that off and drop a red dot back on it for CQB, that could really be a game changer for some of it because you're not changing your shooting position when you're firing and things of that nature.
Yeah. That's what we're hoping to do. I mean, that's the direction the tech is heading, as far as um, having the ability to instantly pull off a red dot, a scope, something magnified, an LPVO, and uh, just having that flexibility in the field. And I think
Yep.
that if we can really do it right, I think it will be a game changer.
Yep. Well, and I'm even interested to see on like with that pick rail chunk you have, especially after you have a locking mount for the sides,
Yep.
about like mounting a laser like a PEC 14 or one of the IR lasers for an aiming laser.
Hmm.
because they can be a pain in the ass just to have on there.
Yeah.
And, where it's, oh, hey, it's daylight. I don't need this. And then you can actually snap it on and use it when you need it.
Yeah.
And that is one where I can see that being incredibly, incredibly nice and helpful.
Yeah, definitely. We when we would show people the system and just kind of, yeah, help them understand how well the system holds a zero, we would slap a laser on this mount, this M-lock mount. We just slap our
Yep.
laser on there, and then we would point it off. I'd zeroed it at a target before the show starts, and then I just am able to just show them, check this out. Boom. I've been pulling these on and off the whole show. Take a look at that. The dots are right on top of each other
Oh,
still.
I distinctly remember you doing that to me. And
Did I?
oh, very much so. Because I said, how is it for repeatability?
Right.
Or something else. Because it was a green laser.
Yep.
and no, you're like, yeah, right here. So it was like you snapped it back and forth, and I looked through it, and then I popped it on and off and went, that really is going back to the same place.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. So no, I distinctly remember that, like you doing that exact move to me at SHOT Show.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, you ask somebody what the secret sauce is, and it's like, well, let me show you. Let's just prove it right here.
Yeah.
We've got it set up. Let's just show you right now and just get rid of all of these questions.
Yeah. Well, that was infinitely helpful to me because I was like, okay. And then I started to look at it honestly a little bit more serious because I could see some more of the merits. Because when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, it's a flashlight holder. Honestly, everybody can see things that go wrong first, right?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
oh, recoil, whatever. I'm going to come around there's people who are going to say, well, you're going to come around a doorway
Come
and
on a
knock
door
that
jam.
off.
Yep.
And well, I know quite a few door kickers. I know way more guys who talk about how this would happen, and the number of door kickers I know who actually like have had something like that happen are one of those is a very different number than the other.
Fair enough.
But it's there's a lot of internet experts out there is what I should be saying.
Oh
And
yeah, everyone's an expert as soon as you go online.
yeah, well, it's because you no longer have to look at someone and be like, well, say that to my face, or everybody gets a little tougher when you're online as well.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a little
Oh,
buffer there, huh?
yep. But so they are you using a rare earth magnet or just like standard magnets?
They're neodymium high grade rare earth magnets, permanent magnets. So the higher grade allows them to not lose their magnetism above a higher temperature. There's the typical neodymium, iron boron permanent magnets are they can start to lose their magnetism at about 80 C. So
Okay.
it's just under 200 F. But the higher grade magnets, which are the ones that we're using in our design, are rated up to 300 F. So it's unless you're doing a few mag dumps, your handguard isn't going to be getting that hot. And if it is, you might have other issues that you might
Yeah.
have,
This
other
this
concerns that you might have.
this probably isn't going to be going on your belt fed.
Yeah.
Like hang right on the
No.
gas block.
No, definitely not.
You know,
No.
so that was going to go to my next question was the heat warranting of it, but you answered that already. And while they do get hot to the touch, I've had stuff where I've been like, yep, I should probably be wearing gloves while I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I've never had a handguard that would make steam.
Yeah. That's good. I mean,
Yep.
if you're mag dumping, it'll take probably 2 or 3 mags before you're at 200, 300 degrees, out of the handguard. And yeah, it could start to lose its magnetism at that point. It's not like it's going to just drop off the mount. It's going to not feel as strong. The force won't be quite as strong as it was.
Then does
But
that come back as it cools down?
it does. It can, as long as it's introduced to another magnetic field,
Okay.
like the accessory that's attached to it. That could strengthen that again. It could recover, but you don't lose the full magnetism until it reaches what's called a Curie temperature, and that's like 800 F.
Okay.
So
So
it's
try to not melt your handguard.
yeah,
And
exactly.
I've done a lot of full auto shooting, and I very rarely see lights mounted when we do that because
Yeah,
it's, well, one, that's where you put your pec on for, but you don't even shoot full auto with that. So,
yeah.
um,
Most flashlights, their internal components, anyways, are usually rated to 100 C, and so
yeah,
it's if you're getting your flashlight, even Surefire lights or stream lights, they all use similar components, internal components, and they're all rated to the same temperature, basically 100 C, unless they did their own proprietary, and they may have like Surefire, maybe they have like really high grade components that are above that, but most electrical components, even like space applications, are still rated to 100 C.
yep. So no, that just makes sense because it's again the likelihood of pushing everything through because as you move further out from the barrel and that heat source, the amount of heat that dissipates goes by a lot faster because, thermodynamics and how heat moves and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
um when we're pushing through all this, this is definitely neat. And I haven't got to talk about one of the things that you kind of mentioned earlier. And I know it is not available yet for purchase, but it is your pods
Yeah.
that you have.
Pod mounts. So those are the other things, I think a SHOT Show had several people that asked whether we offered a magnetic mount or magnetic bipods, bipods or tripods. And I said, no, we don't. But that could be something, yeah, that could be something we could develop pretty easily, because you already have the weapon mount on your gun in an M-lock or a Picatinny, and so it wouldn't take much more to just develop a mount that can attach to the pod side, and then you've got a pod that you can, that instead of parts breaking, or instead of, it's just a breakaway, you can break that off now, stow it, and put it back on when you need it.
Yep,
So
and it takes a lateral force to break these apart, right? Because like when you put it in and
yeah,
you, or the reason why I mentioned that is the lateral force where you have to kind of rock it off to the side because of how that recoil lug. Well, I'm not sure if that's what you would call it, but
that's exactly what I call it.
okay, it's like in my mind, it's a recoil lug
It is
sitting
a
down in
recoiler.
there. Um, when you push on it to air quote load a bipod, where you put
Yep.
the weight going into it forward. Um, this is something that I see being amazing, and the there's a couple possibilities for this. It's if you could, like, if you mounted an Arca rail to one, the PRS guys would be all over this. So if you're
You
not,
might have to tell me what an Arco rail is.
so the Arca rail is something that the shooting industry stole from another industry, and that is cameras. And what you would see is on a lot of the like high end shooting tripods for long distance shooting
Mm-hmm.
are actually camera tripods.
It's just that little quarter 28 stud that you just screw
Well,
into the
so
bottom.
that's what you would think would go into them, but they
Yeah.
have this clamp that is it's a, well, they call it an Arca rail. I'll pull it up so you can look at it too. and they they started as a way to mount cameras to they'd mount to those studs, and then as this rail went through, I gotta find some pictures here and I'll start sharing this. They would screw these rails to the bottom of the rifle and then mount it to their tripods. So like right here, this is the Arca rail,
Huh.
and it clamps on. Actually, here, if you see this, it is a rail that just you put the rail inside, and then you can slide it forward and backward for your different shooting solutions.
Okay. So it's kind
So,
of like a Picatinny, but it gives you that
yep, it's a little,
longitudinal
yep,
freedom.
yeah, it's just a little bit longer, and it has the bumps. It has the key comes up from the bottom on most of them.
Interesting. I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, it's like one of those the PRS guys all get into it, and they'll put it on because when they're doing some of that extreme angle shooting, they'll want to run their tripod back so that their tripod's down, but they're up on a weird position.
Mm.
And that's one where if you could have, oh, hey, pop this on, and you could go from the bipod to that back and forth, you would really be able to start looking at things. So
Yeah, we'll have to look at that. I haven't even heard of that rail till now. So you gave me my next project, Nick.
I am really good at making people waste waste time, or like look into things and they go, "Where? What?" Yeah, like I said, I dabble a little bit in a lot of the shooting sports and industry. I've got a bunch of friends who are their passion is the long range shooting, so that's what they do. Because as you know, being out west where we have distance, shooting long
Yeah,
range
a little bit of that.
is a hobby for a lot of people because, well, we can.
Right.
And I just haven't gone whole hog into that where I have the rails and stuff mounted to them. I know there
Mhm.
was, I want to say like Geisley was making an AR handguard that had the Arca rail on the bottom
Oh,
just
really?
integrated.
There you
And,
go.
like it was some stuff like that, but that's the number of people who bought it because it's like a $400 rail. And
Sure.
but or handguard. So
Mhm.
no, those are just things that I like to see looking forward because I've used a bipod and shot off a bipod or a monopod or things of that nature.
Yeah.
And sometimes the problems they don't all mount the same way.
True. Yeah, just in designing mounts for these pods, there's like, do I go with a swivel stud screw to Picatinny? Do I go to a Picatinny? Do I do an M-lock? I mean, there's like so many different options. It seems like the Picatinny attachment to the pod is a Picatinny attachment. That seems like it's the most popular. So I think that's probably the one we'll start with and
Yep.
see if it catches on, if people like it.
Yep. Either the pick rail or the single sling swivel.
Yeah,
If I could make my mouth make words.
I knew what you meant. But yeah, one of those two, or maybe both of them.
Yep. Just for the guys running the Harris style bipods, because that's the classic. And then other than that, Magpul kind of took over everyone else, or Atlas, which are all very fine bipods. But so you guys are based out of Ogden, Utah.
Yep, that's right.
And where can people find stuff about your products? Because I just realized we've been talking for the better part of an hour and haven't really talked about where to find your stuff.
That's a really great question, Nick. I'm glad you asked that. They can check out our website at magnetech.com. It's got a hyphen in it,
Yep.
magne-tech.com. So they can check that out there. We've got an Instagram account and a Facebook account, which I'm not a huge social media person, but I found that I kind of have to be if I want to own a business in this
Right.
day and age. So every once in a while, you'll see me post something on Instagram or on Facebook. But we did get a lot of good leads from SHOT Show as far as gun shops, retailers that liked our product and that are interested in reselling it for us. So we're also getting into some retail stores. So it may be coming. We've got a store in Washington, a store in Arkansas, a store in Idaho, a couple stores in Utah, a store in Las Vegas. So maybe it's coming to a store near you, hopefully,
Hey,
um,
that's awesome.
with
And
time.
yep, and we love seeing like product innovation and stuff like that coming up because there's really nothing quite like it, and that's what we need to keep moving forward. And that's kind of like the innovation that led to VZ grips. The unique feature of VZ grips, especially their AR grips, is they're machined from a solid block of G10. And G10 is great because it's durable and doesn't get slippery when covered with mud, blood, or sweat. The 17-degree grip angle and wide variety of textures from mild to extreme, along with color options that are available. 1911 grips, Beretta grips, revolver grips. These things all have extreme customizability to include different thumb notches, safety cuts, bottom profiles, and more. With more than 25 textures and 27 colors available, you'll be sure to find something you like. The coupon code is good for 15% off all handgun and rifle grips, and that code is AR-15 podcast. And that is what you call a segue that I made up on the spot.
Yeah, I can tell you've done that a few times.
Yeah. And when we but so this is a very neat product, and I'm very excited to see where this
Thank you.
goes.
I appreciate
And
it.
that's one of the reason why, it's unfortunately I know I got a text when we were going here. Tyler got, you know, detained a little bit longer than he had planned on with the project earlier, and Garth had firefighter duties take over. So you wound up just having to talk to me, but hopefully that was okay for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a real pleasure and an honor to be here. Appreciate
Yep.
it.
Well, and we really do appreciate having you on, and we'll have to have you on again later and see where things have kept going because I know that we didn't even hardly get into you have flashlights that are pretty much have these built into them.
They do. Yeah, they're pretty awesome. So I designed these from the ground up. 1100 lumens are programmable. They've got the locking grooves in them right there. So when we do release our locking mount, they just grab right onto there and lock it in place. But it's a very high quality flashlight. So it's people kind of look at the price and go, wow, it's a little high, but it's 7075 T6 aluminum alloy. Most flashlights are made out of 6061, which is really cheap aluminum. This is high grade stuff. It has to be in order to wear well for the system. And then it's premium driver, premium LED. So it's a rechargeable
Yep.
battery. So yeah, we can definitely talk more at another time.
Yep. I was just looking at it. I was like, we didn't even get into the fact that you're making your own lights or had designed them because I was like, those. At first, I saw them and I was like, that almost looks like another flashlight's footprint on the barrel, but it may be or may not be. It's just as my eye picks stuff up, and I went, but I was like, that now we have to talk about it because I'd never seen that branded before. So I was like, these must be your own design.
They're a Magne-Tech product. It's called Rigel.
Yep.
And people are always like, is it Rigel? I don't know what it is. Named it after one of the brightest stars in our constellation. I was like, it makes sense. Ultimate source of light, name it after a star.
Nope.
So
I get it. I understand. And like I said, programmable. And now, do those take a tape switch?
They do not currently take a pressure switch, a remote switch. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
A remote switch? Not yet. So I am doing some development on this where I integrate a switch right here into the mount so that when you can still use it as a handheld, but as soon as you attach it to the weapon light, then you can control it with a pressure switch. So that is, hopefully I can have a prototype for next SHOT Show of that.
That is awesome. And again, thanks so much for coming on. I'll hit our bumper here on the way out. And do you have anything else you want to mention to everyone before we kind of shut her down for the night?
No, I think that is it, Nick. I appreciate you reaching out to me. Appreciate the time. So.
All right, sounds good. And we'll talk to you here a little bit after we get off air. And everyone else, you folks out there, you stay safe and stay armed. Do you want to support the show? Subscribe and interact on social media. AR-15 Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. AR-15 Podcast on Facebook. AR-15 Podcast 2.0 at gmail.com if you just want to drop us a line. Find us online at firearmsradio.net. Click through our sponsors and support the people who support our show. Primary Arms, VZ Grips, Predator Armor, TacPack, and Patriot Patch Company.